Climbing into my chair, and I've got pink hair. Do you like it? Do you like it? I don't care because it's done now. Just kidding. Please like it. Hey there, my name's Megan if you're new here, and if not, welcome back for episode 28 of Killer Weekend, where each week we'll discuss a true crime case and you guys can feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments box below. If you like all things true crime, supernatural, UFO, conspiracy theory and all that good stuff in between, then please hit that subscribe button and I'll be here for you every Friday with our true crime Killer Weekends, and on and off every couple of Wednesdays with our Weirdo Wednesdays, where I'll discuss something spooky I've heard. Now guys, I am aware it is not a Friday and I'm gonna say my camera is to blame, okay? I'm throwing her under the bus. Me and my camera have a very love-hate relationship. I love her, she hates me, kinda like my dog. But I think we may have solved the issue. Fingers crossed. So thank you so much for hanging in there, and I'm so sorry this week's episode is a wee smidgy late. I will leave a small disclaimer at the beginning of this episode. It does involve details of violent crime and, oh no, bad language. If that's a trigger point for you, then please do turn away now. Close your eyes, give me your hand, darling. Just kidding, it's okay, just go away and watch a wee makeup tutorial. We'll see you another time. So guys, before we dive into this week's business, I have a small update on the Caroline Crouch case. So remember a couple of weeks ago we were talking about this case. It's about a young British woman who was living in Athens with her husband and her baby daughter and the family dog, when all of a sudden tragedy struck one evening when Caroline was allegedly murdered by home intruders in front of her husband, along with also sadly the family dog. Her husband claimed that masked men broke into the house looking for £10,000. However, as you remember me saying in that episode, something was just a wee bit fishy. And you know what guys, always trust your gut, because even though I was saying I'm not saying it's the husband, now I'm saying it's the husband because he's confessed, y'all. That's right, Caroline's smartwatch had recorded she was breathing at 4 AM when she was savagely murdered, and then her smartwatch also proved that she was asleep when she was murdered. So this proved that her husband had actually suffocated her in her sleep while she lay feet away from her infant daughter. He then murdered the family's dog to make it look like part of a home invasion. However, he could have also murdered the dog because perhaps it was defending its owner. So I will be doing a proper episode on this case, but I just wanted to let you know this is quite a big update, and fingers crossed he gets sent to prison for the rest of his dirty life. Rest in peace to Caroline, and love and peace to her family at this time as well. So guys, time to get down to business. Let's get down to business. Remember last week I was talking to you all about how I'd recently hit 1,000 subscribers yet again. Thank you. I love you all so much. And because I was so grateful, I thought I'd do a wee 1K giveaway. And can I say, you guys came out in force. Your movie taste is impeccable, guys. But without further ado, everyone, we have a winner. So we're going to do a wee drum roll, please. Yay! Congratulations! I hope you love your prize. I've put it together with a lot of love and thought and a few wee personal touches in there as well. So I really hope you love it, and I can't wait for you to receive it. Thank you again everyone who put in their entries, and yeah, keep your eyes peeled because it won't be the last. Now guys, let's get into this week's case. And guys, this case has been heavily requested, and by heavily requested I mean 3 people have asked for it, so now I'm doing it. It's one of those cases, it's every Hollywood director's absolute dream. It involves young hot teens, it involves cheerleaders, and it also involves a killer whose motive was to succeed in high school. Tonight everyone, we will be discussing the brutal murder of Kirsten Costas. It was a warm, balmy June evening in 1984 when the phone rang at the Costas residence in Orinda, California. Bernadette Costas answered the phone, and it was 10 PM. She was like, who's calling at this time? Bit rude, but she answers anyway, and the anonymous caller says that they would like to arrange an initiation dinner a surprise initiation dinner for her 15-year-old daughter, Kirsten Costas. You see, Kirsten had just been offered a place on a prestigious sorority within her high school, Miramonte High, for the Bobolinks, nicknamed the Bobbies. The Bobbies were a kind of charity organisation. They would raise money for certain charities, but mainly they liked to organise parties. Very upper class. Kirsten's mum took down the details and agreed that her daughter would be ready at a certain time for this initiation dinner. However, the caller hung up before Bernadette could actually get the caller's name, and she went on about her day. Her daughter actually wasn't at home at the time because Kirsten was at a cheer camp for her cheerleading training. As Bernadette Costas went about her evening, excited about the prospect of her daughter joining this new social club, she had no clue that the person on the other end of that phone had no intention of taking her daughter to a meal. In fact, within 48 hours, Kirsten would be stabbed 5 times by the same person on the end of the line. Kirsten Marina Costas was born on the 23rd of July, 1968 in Oakland, California. She was the first child to Arthur and Bernadette Costas, but was soon followed along by her little brother Peter. The family had a very financially fortunate upbringing, and in Oakland they had the best houses, the best cars. You see, her dad actually had a really good job working for the 3M company, and her mother was a homemaker who was often involved in charitable organisations. The family never wanted for anything, and when the children were quite young, Bernadette and Arthur had decided that it was time for a change. They wanted better. They wanted bigger. And what's bigger and better than Orinda, California? Orinda, California had a really good reputation of being for the kind of middle to upper class families. Also, their high school graduation rate was between 99 and 100%. The Costas were a perfect fit in the affluent suburb of Orchard Road. They seemed to have it all. And Kirsten was said to have it all as well. Kirsten was beautiful. She had this dark olive skin. She had brown hair that was cut into a kind of curly bob style, very 80s. She was said to have stood out as well because obviously California is known for its buxom blondes. She was this gorgeous kind of dark-haired Mediterranean looking girl, and she got quite a lot of attention. Not only this, she was said to have the best in high fashion. Because this was the 80s, that meant more neon than the body can carry. Kirsten had these tie-dye pop socks that were very on trend. She was said to be extremely witty, very sarcastic, and had a good sense of humour. Her mum and dad, Bernadette and Arthur, said that they themselves were quite reserved, quite quiet, but this was not Kirsten at all. They said that when she was in the house, everybody knew because she'd be running from room to room, dancing. She'd be constantly calling her friends on the old landline. Remember those guys? This girl has everything, and she was loved by all. Well, not all. Certain people weren't Kirsten's biggest fan. You see, she was on the high school swim team at Miramonte High, and also she was training to become a cheerleader. She was in the very popular clique, the top tier, if you will, of her sophomore class, and people said that this made her seem quite confident, but others said that it was more than confidence, and she was downright cocky. These people being Nancy Kane-Mark and her friend Joanna. These girls were known as being quite alternative for Miramonte High School. You see, they were very into Madonna. They wore a lot of black. They had the kind of dark roots situation. Not only that, they liked the chains. Okay, lots of layers of pearls, layers of crosses. Nancy was actually part of the popular crowd when she was a little bit younger, but all of a sudden there was a shift in Nancy. She started wearing a lot of black, and her dad was actually a very wealthy doctor, so she had quite good standing in the community as well. She enjoyed horse riding, but all of a sudden she enjoyed punk rock and a little bit of madge. This made her stand out, and not for the right reasons according to the popular clique, and definitely not for the right reasons according to Kirsten. You see, Kirsten would often walk past her and make snide comments. I mean, don't get me wrong, Nancy would give it back tenfold. Even during an argument once, Nancy said that she was going to kill her. Joanna, on the other hand, was completely different from Nancy. She had actually not come from a very wealthy household. She was said to be quite gawky looking. She liked to wear her glasses, which everyone knows in the 1990s and 80s, you were a nerd the minute you put those varifocals on your head. We've all seen She's All That. We know how it works. Her father actually used to refurbish old Volkswagen vans and camper vans, and that was his passion project. People said that she had no chance because she wore glasses and was an absolute loser. Lovely. Despite certain friends of Kirsten Costas later saying that she was never nasty, she was always trying to be funny and sometimes people just took her the wrong way. Others would state that no, she was quite a nasty wee beastie and she would often put others down for the entertainment of her clique. Kirsten's close friends would say that she was only mean to people that she didn't care about. Moving on. To gain an insight into these girls' lives and the way they thought at the age of 15, one of Kirsten's friends said that Kirsten would do these funny things that were just so Kirsten. And one of these things was, on a certain occasion, her friend Stacey Bennett, FYI, all of her friends seem to be called Stacey. I don't really know if that's a thing or if perhaps that serves some inspiration for the movie The Heathers. Just saying. Stacey Bennett was holding a sleepover and Stacey's mum had a friend who had a daughter. Now the girls didn't really like this daughter and they didn't really want her hanging around them. When the girl was there, she wasn't really happy about it, so therefore she would just sit minding her own business, writing in her journal. But the girls said that she would look at them and then start scribbling furiously. So because they were a wee bit curious, when the girl went in for a shower that night and to brush her teeth before bed, Kirsten thought she'd do something a little bit funny. She went into the girl's bag, got out the journal and started reading through this girl's private thoughts. She was saying bad things about them in her journal and therefore Kirsten read them aloud for the whole group to hear. Now when the girl came back out, her journal was safely tucked away and later on the girls would make little digs and jokes here and there just so she knew that they knew what she was writing. Teenage girls. Lovely. But whatever you want to believe about Kirsten, no one can deny she was a force to be reckoned with. She was really determined at school, in her friendship groups, and also with her extracurricular activities. Kirsten had applied to be in the high school cheerleading squad, and seriously guys, this is a hardcore audition. There was 3 judges, very X Factor, and not only that, the families actually had to sign a contract to say that if their daughters were successful, they would be happy to spend 500 smackaroos on cheerleading camp and new outfits. Now, this doesn't seem like a lot of money in the grand scheme of things, but remember, this was in 1984. If this was today, that would have been about $1,300. Very expensive. Kirsten was so excited when she was offered a place on the cheerleading squad. Only 4 other girls were actually offered a place that year, so it was extremely exclusive. And when she returned back from her cheerleading camp, she was even more excited because she had this secret Bobby's initiation dinner. She picked her outfit painstakingly, going through dress after dress, trying to find the exact outfit to welcome her into this new society. On the evening of June 23rd, 1984, Kirsten went for a swim and started getting ready for her night out. Her mum and dad and her younger brother Peter headed off because they were going to a potluck dinner for Peter's baseball team. At around 8:20 that night, Bernadette Costas phoned the home to make sure that Kirsten left the porch light on so that the family would be able to see their way up the driveway when they returned home later that evening. She wished her daughter well and hoped that she had an exciting night. Little did she know this would be the last time she would ever speak to Kirsten. At 8:30 p.m, Kirsten would get into a yellow orangey Ford Pinto. They drove away and over 30 minutes later she would turn up at the door of Alex and Mary Jane Arnold. This family, for all intents and purposes, were complete strangers to Kirsten. She turned up at their door and explained that she was in a car with her friend, but her friend got all weird on her. Would she be able to come in and use her telephone? Now the Arnolds are lovely people because they let her on in even though she's a stranger, which guys is a big safety no. When she gets on the phone, however, her parents are not at home, they don't answer, so she explains this awkwardly to Alex Arnold and he is a nice person and offers her a lift home. She takes a lift home, but Alex said that out of the corner of his eye he can see someone lurking in the bushes as they walk to his car. As they're driving along the road, Alex can see a yellow-orange Ford Pinto following closely behind them when when he questions Kirsten on this, she said that it's no big deal and that her friend's just being weird again. She then starts talking about cheerleading camp, and she doesn't seem really distressed to Alex at the time. When he drops her off, she explains that she can't see her father's car in the driveway, so therefore they must not be home yet, but not to worry, she's going to pop next door to the neighbours. And Alex watches her make her way across the lawn. Out of absolutely nowhere, he sees someone darting across the lawn and in a frenzied attack, moving their arm up and down. Alex thinks that Kirsten's just been attacked in an unprovoked fist fight, and he sees the perpetrator jumping back into the orange-yellow Ford Pinto. He then starts to chase the car as, unbeknownst to him, Kirsten Costas lays there having been stabbed twice in the chest, twice in the back, and once as a defensive wound on her arm. She slowly makes her way to the door of her neighbour and she screams out, "I've been stabbed, I've been stabbed. I can't breathe." Arthur Hillman, Kirsten's next door neighbour, asks her who could have done this as he runs out to her aid. But before she can answer, Kirsten falls unconscious in his arms. Arthur begins to give Kirsten CPR, but she seems unresponsive. Meanwhile, Alex, on the other hand, is chasing this absolute maniac in his car, totally unaware that Kirsten has not been punched, she's been stabbed. When he loses the Ford Pinto, he decides to go back to Kirsten's house and make sure she's okay. But she's not okay. Alex arrives back at the residence to see Kirsten being loaded into the back of an ambulance. When he's questioned by police, he gives quite a good eyewitness statement of exactly who he saw attacking Kirsten. He says that it was a chunky, blonde girl with stringy hair. Savage, Alex, savage. He also said this person was present at the bottom of his road, hiding in the bushes, when he and his wife had spoken to Kirsten earlier on that evening at their home. As Kirsten clings to life, her family arrive home to this absolute nightmare. Her brother Peter, who was 12 years old at the time, was made to stay in the family car so he didn't see anything involving his sister or the crime. Her mum and dad had no clue who could have done this to their daughter, as they learned that someone had stabbed her with a knife that was between 12 and 18 inches. Like, who even owns a knife like that? Like, that's just not normal behaviour. They learn along with her defensive wounds, Kirsten's also been stabbed through her carotid artery, and therefore she has little to no chance of survival. Kirsten does succumb to these injuries, and at 11:02 p.m. she's pronounced dead. The people of Orinda are understandably absolutely horrified. Kirsten stood for everything that your typical Californian girl stood for. She was this beautiful, athletic cheerleader, and she was taken so quickly away. She was only 15. Members of the community quickly come up with their own assumptions as to who could have committed this brutal crime. First of all, they go down the old Satanist route, you know, the old devil worshipper. If you wear black, you must be a killer. They don't want to believe that anyone normal in their town could do something this brutal. They also have a theory that it could possibly be some drug users or perhaps a PCP using gang, as you do. But police have a different idea. Because of Alex and his wife Mary Jane's statement, they think it could be a blonde teenager, much like your typical California girl. Police also have a really good description of the car that was used during the crime, a yellow-orangey Ford Pinto, quite a rare colour choice. Investigators interview Kirsten's friends at school to try and get a whole picture of who she was as a person and who would have a motive to kill her. Police soon learn that Kirsten was extremely popular and almost loved by everyone. Almost. Because remember, we have Nancy Kane Mark and her friend Joanna. Now, everyone kind of thought it could possibly be these two girls. Like we said, there was no love lost. They didn't really get along. They were completely different people. Even though Nancy and Joanna had solid alibis for the time that Kirsten was murdered, the town didn't really want to let that one go. Nancy received several abusive anonymous phone calls to her home phone. She was also attacked at school verbally and physically because all of her peers thought that she was this killer. I mean, let's remember, she did threaten to kill Kirsten, but most importantly, Nancy didn't match the description given by Alex and Mary Jane. She wasn't this chunky blonde girl. She had blonde roots, yeah, but she had jet black hair and she was quite a slender young girl. Also, she had nobody in her family that used an orange Pinto, so why were people pinpointing this on her so much? Because she was different. We've seen this so many times. We see it in crime after crime involving young teens. I mean, if they listen to a bit of Metallica and a bit of Marilyn Manson, then they're suddenly Ted Bundy. Nancy and Joanna actually even had to leave school because of the amount of abuse they would receive. Not only this, people said that Nancy was to move to London to avoid her charges for the murder, but Nancy wasn't even accused of the murder and she never left to go to London. The rumour mill was absolutely vicious, but police knew that they didn't have their killer in Nancy or Joanna, so they then turned to the FBI. The FBI created a criminal profile based on the crime scene itself and speaking with Kirsten's friends and families. They themselves determined that this was a frenzied attack. It was unplanned and the person who did this was most likely within Kirsten's peer group, so possibly a friend. They said that this person wouldn't show any real remorse for their crime because they felt like it was justified and Kirsten deserved to die. FBI profilers believed that the killer would perhaps be less financially well off than Kirsten and her family and would perhaps always feel like she was on the outside looking in. Now remember guys, Nancy, daughter of a wealthy doctor, she had nothing to be jealous of Kirsten for. She didn't fit this profile. But someone else did. Someone who'd spent her lifetime on the outside of the inner circle, looking in, waiting for her moment. And that someone was Bernadette Proddy. Bernadette Proddy was born on September 20th, 1968. She was one of 7 children. Yes, 7. Ouch. I would be like, sew me up after 3 or 4 and I don't even want to look at my husband again. She was born into a very strict Catholic Italian-American family. She had 5 sisters and 1 brother. Bernadette's dad was a retired engineer and the family were said to live quite a nice middle-class life. You know, they weren't as rich as Kirsten's family, but by no means were they poor. They just couldn't afford the Rolexes and the Mercedes-Benz, but who can these days? Living in the town of Orinda, California, a lot of the other families had a little bit more money than they did, and when she was at Miramonte High School, Bernadette felt like this difference in class was so obvious. Bernadette, when she was younger, was a devout Catholic. She spent so much time in the church with her mum and her siblings, and she was said to be a very kind and innocent-hearted young girl. However, when she was 15, everything changed. Bernadette was said to become obsessed with getting in that inner popular clique, and unless she was in that particular group, nothing else would be good enough. Her friends actually said that Bernadette seemed to have this delusion that she was very unpopular. She wasn't. She had her own friends, she had her own peer group, she was doing quite well for herself, but because she wasn't in that select few girls, she didn't feel like she was good enough. Bernadette had a friend from junior high who was actually within Kirsten's clique, and it was said that she would kind of linger about trying to find her way in. She would also tag along to several social events where she wasn't the most wanted. She was known as being a little bit of a wannabe, and not in the good Spice Girls way, in a kind of annoying, clingy way. Kirsten was said to have never really took to Bernadette's personality. She quite thought she was a bit desperate and that she was only really interested in joining the group for the social status and not because she actually liked anyone in it. When Kirsten auditioned to be in the cheerleading squad, so did Bernadette. Kirsten made the squad, Bernadette didn't. Also, Bernadette was said to be a talented writer in school, but when she went for the school newspaper, she was unfortunately not given a place because it was said to be more of a popularity contest, more so who was on the cover rather than who was behind the scenes writing the newspaper. Bernadette was said to be furious when she missed out both chances and really ultimately blamed the fact that she didn't have enough money, she wasn't pretty enough, and that she didn't have that popularity status that Kirsten did. Bernadette's family, like we said, were not poor. They just couldn't couldn't afford to keep up with the Joneses, and she was said to have been really ashamed about this. She was even ashamed of their home, saying that she wanted a fancy modern home with Laura Ashley wallpaper and Vogue furniture. Don't we all, Bernadette? But some of us sadly have to settle for IKEA furniture and Home Bargains pillows. Despite her perceived shortcomings about herself, Bernadette was said to have actually had a lot going for her at this time. Like I said, she was academically very intelligent, she was very good at English. Not only this, she'd gained access into the prestigious Bobolinks, nicknamed the Bobbies, sorority club within the high school, which Kirsten was also now a member of. You see, Bernadette had actually gained access to this club through another popular friend. On one occasion, Bernadette was offered a place on the class ski trip along with the elite popular girls. She didn't want to miss this chance, but she knew she didn't really have the money to afford this trip, so therefore she worked really hard. She would babysit, help people out in the neighbourhood to try and save up money for the trip. And she did, you know, she earned her own money and she was able to go on the trip. But she hadn't saved enough money to be able to afford these amazing designer outfits and the designer ski wear that her other friends were affording. So she still had to go for second-hand ski wear, and this was something that she was said to be quite embarrassed about. Only made worse by the fact that when she was on the trip, Kirsten Costas made a little comment about it. Of course she did. Kirsten allegedly said to Bernadette that her skis were crummy and that they belonged in a thrift store. This was obviously to Kirsten's friends, just another passing hilarious comment from Kirsten, but Bernadette took this as a personal slight against she and her family. Kirsten's friends would also say that Kirsten wasn't this mean girl, but what someone else might say behind your back, she would just say to your face. Bernadette, in the meantime, would grow more and more unhappy with her life. She wanted more. She was like this empty void, and nothing was going to fill it for her. She even got a job working behind the school desk with Kirsten, and that wasn't good enough. She would often do favours for Kirsten's popular jock friends. Kirsten wouldn't actually do it herself, because if Kirsten had been caught doing it, she would have gotten a lot of trouble. So she knew for a fact that she was kind of using Bernadette, because Bernadette would do anything Kirsten asked. Bernadette started looking at Kirsten as the embodiment of everything that she wanted to be but would never become. She soon realised that in order to get here, she would either have to befriend Kirsten or become her. So Bernadette makes a choice and she sets a plan into motion. And exactly what the outcome of this plan should have been, I'll let you decide that once you've heard the rest of the story. Whilst Bernadette knew Kirsten would be away at cheer camp, she decided to walk to a nearby payphone. Yes, bear that in mind. A payphone. She calls the Costas home, in which she asks Bernadette Costas to make sure her daughter is ready on a certain date and time on the 23rd of June. She doesn't give Bernadette Costas her name and hangs up before she's got a chance to ask for it. Bernadette then makes arrangements with her father on the 23rd of June to be dropped off at a nearby family friend's home, a home that she would often babysit for the young family. But she wasn't babysitting that night. She persuades her dad to leave her the orange-yellow Ford Pinto, as she says she'll feel safer if the car is in the driveway, and then also if she can drive it home later that night. Bear in mind, she's 15. She's not got a driver's license, so okay, Dad. Bernadette's dad walks a short distance away to their home, and she kids on that she's going round the back door to this family's house, but she's not. She then jumps in her car and heads over to Kirsten Costas to pick her up. When Kirsten comes out of the house, Bernadette says she's a little bit miffed, you know, she's kind of like, why are you here? Yay. Bernadette explains that the whole dinner for the Bobbies is a complete ruse. She actually wants to take Kirsten to a party. Now bear in mind, at this point in time, Bernadette Proddy is wearing old sweats and a dirty t-shirt. Not really party attire. Kirsten at this time notices in the back a large 18-inch butcher knife, to which Bernadette explains away that her vegetarian sister often prepares her meals in the back of the car. I'm sorry, no. She's hardly at the stop signs, is she? Like, 1 minute, still chopping up my broccoli. Kirsten laughs this off, and the two girls then drive to a local church car park, in which Bernadette says that Kirsten sparks up a doobie, a little bit of the Mary Jane, a little bit of marijuana. She offers Bernadette a smoke, but Bernadette because she's such a good girl, declines the offer, and the two girls start talking. The talk becomes a heated argument when Bernadette asks why Kirsten is so mean to her and why she can't just be her friend. Kirsten thinks this conversation's taken a weird turn, and Bernadette starts to get fearful that Kirsten's going to go into school on Monday and tell everyone what a weirdo she is. Bernadette would also suggest later on that Kirsten perhaps took things the wrong way and thought Bernadette fancied her a wee bit. An angry Kirsten gets out of the car and makes her way to the home of Alex and Mary Jane. At this point, Bernadette follows behind in the car, gets out of the car, and it is her that the family see in the bushes at the bottom of their driveway. Hi, it's me. It's Bernadette. I mean, come on, Jesus. Bernadette, honey, tone it down a bit. Woofed. Bernadette all this time is overthinking, she's panicking, she knows that she's got to go back to school on Monday with this girl, and what's she gonna say about her? What will they say Monday at school? Gotta love a bit of Grease, don't you? Brilliant movie. As Bernadette pulls up to Kirsten's house and sees her make her way across the lawn, she says that she just saw red, and she flies out of the car in a rage with her 18-inch butcher knife. Kirsten starts screaming at her to get away, that she's a weirdo, and she flies into an absolute frenzy, stabbing Kirsten 5 times. She then in a panic runs back to the car, she takes the butcher knife, and disclaimer, because this is just nasty, if you're eating your dinner, I suggest you put it away right now, especially if you're eating a raw steak, because she heads back home, rinses the knife off just a smidge, and puts it back in the utensils drawer. That in itself should be a life sentence. Think about her poor mum just chopping up the carrots. Absolutely rotten. Then Bernadette gets changed and heads out on a nice midnight stroll with her mum. Her mum says that she didn't notice anything strange about Bernadette's behaviour. In fact, she was acting extremely calm. Despite the fact that Bernadette matched the eyewitness statement of Alex and the fact that she drove this yellow-orangey Pinto, nobody really put 2 and 2 together because her personality was so gentle, so kind, so loving, and everyone thought that this could not possibly be within her nature to commit such a violent crime. If Bernadette was feeling guilty, it didn't show. She seemed to be thriving at this time. She'd become a candy striper. She'd also become treasurer of the Bauble Links. Not only that, she'd gotten herself a little boyfriend. Go you. And it seemed like Bernadette was finding it a lot easier to shine without Kirsten Costas stealing her spotlight. Kirsten's family, on the other hand, at this time were absolutely broken, as were her friends. Her friends were lashing out at people just because they wanted answers. They wanted to know who killed their friend. And her family were so desperate for answers that they put up a $50,000 reward. Kirsten's father, Arthur, believed that it was a student. He was adamant that this person was walking and talking in the halls of Miramonte High School, and he thought this person would be a danger to anyone who came in their path. Bernadette stood by as Nancy and Joanna were ostracised and basically forced out of the high school, and she was just living her best life. Once police had the FBI profile, they started to fix their eye on Bernadette as she fitted this perfectly. Police called her in and she agreed to take a polygraph test, which she passed on most of the questions. I think there was 1 or 2 that were inconclusive, one including where she was that night, because she said that she was out babysitting and they'd caught her in a lie because the family that she usually babysat for said that they hadn't heard from Bernadette within a year. She then of course had an answer for this because she's had ages to think of one, and she comes out and says that she was actually driving out of town to see an R-rated movie, but she never got in, so therefore she, funnily enough, never had a movie stub. Convenient. Police don't believe Bernadette at this point and they approach her with the profile, and Bernadette actually has the cojones to come out and say, yeah, it sounds just like me. That's because it is you, Bernadette. It is you. At this point, police believe that Bernadette is a hairline away from confessing. They only have circumstantial evidence, so they really need her confession to back all this up. They give her time to go away and think about it. Bernadette can't deal with the guilt anymore. She knows the police are closing in on her and it's only a matter of time. So she comes home from school and she asks if she can speak to her mother. Her mother says she's too tired, so can she speak to her another time? time. Not being rude, but maybe why we're in this predicament in the first place. The next day, Bernadette writes a letter to her mother and hands her it as she's on her way out the door to school. This letter is a full confession. Bernadette's mother is obviously completely horrified with what she's read. She can't believe that her young daughter would be capable of such a horrible crime. So she contacts her husband and then goes to Bernadette's school to pick her up. On the 10th of December 1984, Bernadette Proddy hands herself in to police and pleads guilty to second-degree murder. Because Bernadette was 15 years old at the point of committing the crime, the maximum sentence at that time in California would be 10 years. Obviously, Kirsten's family are not happy about this at all. They feel like it's not second-degree murder. With the phone call and everything leading up to it, they believe that Bernadette had so many chances to change this and turn it around. They believe that she plotted and planned to murder their daughter because she was jealous of her. The Costases lobby to have her tried for first-degree murder, even though they know it's not going to change the sentence at all. It's just something they need as a family for peace of mind, so they can get real justice for their daughter. When the case goes to trial, the judge seems to be weirdly on the side of Bernadette and her family and says that he really questions the motives of the prosecution and the Costas family for bringing this to his attention. He says that he feels like it's just to cause more heartache and pain and also for more media attention. He says he feels as if the Proddys have suffered enough and Bernadette has suffered enough and it's time to stop the pain. There's so many things that back up the Costas' view that this was first-degree murder and that she plotted to kill young Kirsten. Obviously, we've got the phone box. Why wouldn't she just use her family phone if she was inviting her friend to a party? Why would she take the time to walk to a phone box so that she could stay anonymous? Also, we have the 18-inch butcher knife that she says was just casually in the back seat. Her sister actually did go on the stand to testify that this was her knife that she used for chopping up carrots in the back of the car, but I just don't believe that, and many people believe that her sister perjured herself in order to try and protect Bernadette. I mean, it's an 18-inch machete. Come on, honey. Also, we have the sweatpants situation. Who goes to a party wearing sweatpants and a dirty Cheeto-stained t-shirt? Nobody. And she wasn't heading to a party either. As the prosecution had proven, there was no party. She made it all up. Several of Bernadette's friends also argued with the fact that Bernadette said that Kirsten went to smoke weed at the church car park. A lot of people said that Kirsten didn't really touch drugs at all. And not only that, the fact that Bernadette claimed that she was such an angel and said no thank you to the drugs, they also said that this would never have happened because Bernadette was so obsessed with impressing Kirsten, she would have done anything she'd asked her to. In fact, when she was at a party with the popular crowd previously, a couple of the boys and girls had been doing cocaine and Bernadette took some as well, just because she didn't want to seem like a square. Unfortunately though, the judge just didn't see any point in this case going through and threw the case out of court, leaving the Costas absolutely broken. Obviously, during the trial, there was many people coming out with negative things to say about Kirsten. And guys, come on, we can all change. You know, she was 15 years of age. She could have become a really amazing person, but unfortunately, Bernadette stole that from her, so we'll never know. Bernadette served only a small section of her sentence and was released at the age of 23. It was a 2 out of 3 parole board vote, and one of the voters felt like Bernadette wasn't quite ready to be out in the public yet, because during her time at a juvenile detention centre, she'd got herself a little boyfriend, little BF, but she wasn't very nice to this boyfriend because whenever he would do something that displeased Bernadette, she would let him know, physically and verbally attacking him. So they felt like she had a hairline trigger and was ready to snap at any point when she didn't get what she wanted. Unfortunately, majority wins and Bernadette was released at the age of 23 with a new identity and the freedom to live a long and happy life, something that Kirsten will never experience. She was said to have moved on, she has a husband and children, and not only this, she works in the medical care sector as a nurse. as a nurse, everyone, so just let that sink in. Her identity has been leaked several times, and yes, if you Google her full name, you can find it online. The Costas family were said to be absolutely destroyed by this crime, and they moved to Hawaii to escape the ghost of their young daughter in Orinda, California. The family unfortunately had the wounds of this murder reopened in 1994 when a Lifetime movie named The Death of a Cheerleader in the UK, and in the US I believe it was A Friend to Die For. This movie was starring Tori Spelling and Kelly Martin, so already that just suggests how bad the acting is. Kelly Martin plays the part of Bernadette Proddy, and Tori Spelling plays the part of Kirsten Costas, which already makes her an unlikable character. Does anyone really love Tori Spelling? No? Jury's out on that one? Okay. The film actually portrays Kirsten as this horrible, vindictive, mean girl who had it coming, and Bernadette as this beautiful angel who just got swept into the wrong crowd. It's a very biased look at the crime, and definitely I can understand why the Costas family and why Kirsten's friends were enraged by this. You can totally see it's only through a one-sided lens, and yeah, I mean, I really doubt that Tori Spelling did an Oscar-winning job at portraying the young teen, so let's just take that with a pinch of salt. Several of Kirsten's friends would later come out and say that it was a completely unfair portrayal, and that this young girl was not a nasty girl. She merely had a sharp tongue and just hadn't grown up yet, and now she'll never have the chance. Regardless of what you think of Kirsten Costas or what you think you know about her behaviour, remember how her family spoke of her, this young, vibrant girl moving from room to room dancing, and they'll never see that ever again. Do you guys believe that all this just happened to fall into place for Bernadette and it was a spur of the moment, spontaneous crime? Or do you think that she was manipulating the whole situation so that she could insert herself into the inner clique and take Kirsten's place? Did she plan to murder Kirsten Costas? I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode. If you did, give it a big cheeky thumbs up for me. Also guys, if you're a first time viewer and you're sitting there thinking, she's not too irritating, then please hit that subscribe button. I'll be here for you every Friday with our killer weekends, and on and off every couple of Wednesdays with our Weirdo Wednesdays, where we can discuss something spooky I've heard. I want to say another big thank you. I love you all, and congratulations to this week's 1K giveaway winner. Also guys, please do remember, lock your doors, don't talk to strangers, and yeah, just don't try and be anyone else. As the mum says in Just Friends the movie, be yourself, be yourself, be yourself. Beautiful. See ya! Mwah. Big kisses.